Welcome to Boxing Predictions. Today we're talking about the shock victory for Andy Ruiz Jr. when he took the 3 world heavyweight titles from Anthony Joshua with a 7th round stoppage. So we're going to be talking about this fight and we're going to be questioning whether Anthony Joshua should call it a day. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and hit that subscribe button along with that notification bell so you're notified as and when new videos crop up on the channel. So Anthony Joshua, he lost those 3 titles, and I've heard a lot of people question whether he should in fact call it a day, because let's be honest, it was unexpected and it was devastating how it happened. You know, we're not talking about a fight that was seen as 50-50. We're talking about a late replacement, someone with a fairly average CV, not known for knockouts, not known for big wins. And he went in there and he did the job. He fought exceptionally well, showed good hand speed, got in close, you know, and ultimately landed shots that hurt Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua was not able to recover. Now, whilst I'm not a huge AJ fan, I did have him to win. I mean, that's no real surprise. I had him to win by stoppage in the first half of the fight. Ultimately, I thought that AJ's power, you know, his size, his strength, you know, his devastating KO ability would be the difference, regardless of what Andy Ruiz Jr. could bring to the table. So let's just talk about the fight itself. You know, Andy Ruiz, he pressed forward. You know, he stood in the middle of the ring and he was moving forward. He was pressing the action. And whilst the fact that Andy Ruiz did get dropped himself, I think, you know, one of the real stories of this fight was that he showed a fantastic chin. You know, he was dropped, but he got up and you could see that there was 0 issues with him. He was ready to go. It was almost like nothing had happened. And as soon as he got up, AJ went in for the kill. He was throwing bombs and he actually landed, you know, 3, possibly 4 pretty huge shots. Ruiz just kept standing. You know, and then the shot that changed the game, you know, was a classic defensive in the pocket. I am taking bombs. I've got to throw back. Otherwise, you know, this could be an early night. And Andy Ruiz landed that shot. He landed that shot and he hurt AJ. And to be fair, and the facts are, that was basically it. The rest of the fight is almost irrelevant, because AJ was unable to recover. And, you know, the phrase boxing clever gets bandied about a lot, but it's something that AJ showed that he couldn't do, either offensively or defensively. You know, he's used to hurting people and then being given the space to be reckless in his attempts to finish. And, you know, this usually works. We've seen this over and over again. You know, he hurts an opponent, he charges in, swinging, not like the way that we see, you know, and people criticize Wilder, but, you know, he's looking for those heavy shots. He's not thinking about that the shot's going to be coming back. He's just basically waiting for the referee to stop the fight. And as I've mentioned many times when I've been discussing Anthony Joshua, referees are exceptionally quick to stop an Anthony Joshua fight, because I almost feel like they think that he's going to seriously injure the opponent. So if you go back and you watch some of those Anthony Joshua fights, they get stopped very, very quickly. And some people said, that's good. That is good. You know, they avoided, you know, the potential life-altering injuries, okay? But it was different this time, because it wasn't just that shots were being fired back. Andy Ruiz didn't step back. He maintained his position. You know, he took a few of those shots. Then he was throwing shots forward himself. And obviously he landed the shot that basically changed the game, okay? But then we talk about when AJ's actually injured himself. He's managed to get to his feet. And, you know, there's no IQ. There's no IQ. Maybe he just didn't know what to do. You know, and you see later on in the fight when he's telling the corner, like, why am I feeling like this? Maybe it's true that he just didn't know what to do. Maybe, like, there's all this talk about him getting knocked out and whatever and sparring multiple times. Maybe when that happens, it's just, they call it a day, you know, and that is it, you know, whatever. He's never had that adversity, really, apart from that, you know, that Klitschko fight where, you know, he managed to, you know, get the better of it. But, you know, in this case, you know, he was hurt. He was wobbling. His hands were down. You know, he was almost asking Andy Ruiz to stop him, I felt, particularly in that, you know, third round. And Andy Ruiz was clever. You know, not only did he kind of take his time, but then when he saw his opportunities, he was straight in there. And he was throwing combinations that were making it very, very difficult for the slow and completely drained of anything Anthony Joshua. You know, so, and one thing I also noticed was that, you know, like I just mentioned about, you know, when you're, you know, fight or flight mode and you're, you know, the punches come in your way and, you know, you just have to take a shot. Joshua was doing this, but really it wasn't really the time because, you know, there were some opportunities, like basically when he was buzzed out, and if you rewatch it, he throws some absolutely colossal bombs that take about a week to go round. You know, they were very dangerous shots for him defensively, and they're part of the reason why Ruiz was able to basically get in there. And he showed just incredibly poor IQ, I felt. And I could see that when I was watching that, I just thought, you know, Joshua's completely blown it. He's completely, you know, exposed himself. He's shown so many of his weaknesses here. So many of his weaknesses in one fight against this opponent, you know. So, you know, since the fight has occurred, there's been so many excuses that people have just thrown up to why Joshua failed to perform. You know, they're saying that, you know, one, it was the fight in away soil. It was, you know, different type of ring walks and the venue, all these sorts of stupid things that shouldn't really make any difference whatsoever. And I would not be prepared to accept them because, you know, AJ's fought different venues around the UK, big events, you know, so you can't really say that. Change of opponent, again, I don't usually accept this. Maybe if this was like last minute, like week of the fight, and it was such a completely, you know, chalk and cheese, I just would not accept this. Then there's a couple of other things, you know, where we're talking about the fact that he had a panic attack backstage, or like, you know, in the changing rooms, that he's been knocked out in sparring, you know, just within the last week or so, that, you know, that they wanted to pull the fight on the day of the fight. Eddie Hearn refused it. Whether this is true, you know, we will never really probably know that. But I guess if someone is not 100% ready, they shouldn't be going into this fight. But I guess the problem we have here is that, you know, there's so much money involved, you know, that sometimes there is the pressure to continue. But anyway, let's start talking about, you know, as I said, should it be the end of the road for Anthony Joshua? Anthony Joshua he's been at the top of the tree, you know, Olympic gold medalist, comes into the professional game, and he's been given quite an easy road to glory. You know, he got the belts, you know, he fought Charles Martin, shouldn't really have had that fight. He was effectively given those belts. You know, he's had a mixture of, you know, average opponents. Maybe, you know, partly that's to do with, you know, a lack of, you know, maybe caliber opposition. But he's gone through, he's stopped almost all of his opponents, apart from Joseph Parker, which went the distance. And the fact that he's then lost to someone who was perceived as not having a remote opportunity of being capable of dropping Anthony Joshua, you have to think, his standing in the position is gone all the way down to the bottom. And what I would say is I don't think it's the end of the road for Anthony Joshua. I mean, I was quite impressed with how humble he was in the ring and the fact that he was prepared to give Andy Ruiz, this was his opportunity. He'd won the belts. It's all about Andy Ruiz. He was the better man on the night, and I kind of respected that. And it was no surprise to me for Eddie Hearn to be in there and saying that they're going to invoke the immediate rematch later on this year. I think he even said a date. But the other thing that did not surprise me was that the rematch is back in the UK. So what's going to happen? That it's going to be everything is going to be stacked in Anthony Joshua's favour to get those belts back. But what I would agree with some people that have mentioned in the last couple of days, if Joshua cannot beat Andy Ruiz, I think it's probably it. I think that Anthony Joshua is not the sort of guy that is prepared to go through wars. He's not the sort of guy that's prepared to, have this sort of journey. He's the star. He is a star, And I think a second defeat on the spin, he will just call it a day. He will call it a day. That is my opinion. And as I alluded to just a few moments ago, we saw quite a few. Whilst if you've watched Anthony Joshua before one of his fights, we all know the weaknesses that Anthony Joshua has, and we know how to beat Anthony Joshua. Okay, but he really exposed them to the masses in this fight against, as we say, someone who wasn't expected to cause him any issues. And you kind of look at it, and you kind of look at the what's there, and you think, people like Tyson Fury, if Tyson Fury can avoid getting knocked out by Anthony Joshua, he would easily outbox Anthony Joshua when it would be completely one-sided. I mean, I would go as far to say that it would probably be a 12-round shutout. Luis Ortiz, I would fancy Luis Ortiz to outbox Anthony Joshua. I mean, that Luis Ortiz was a fight that I thought that we would probably see. Before it was announced that Ortiz would fight Wilder again, I thought that we were possibly looking at a Ortiz-Joshua fight later on this year. But I actually think now that, from what we've seen more in the last few days, Ortiz would handle Anthony Joshua quite easily as well. Quite easily. So, really, Anthony Joshua has a lot of rebuilding to do. Now, despite what I've just said, Anthony Joshua has, that rare natural power that is able to stop anyone. And Anthony Joshua could go on to have, continue his career and fight another 15 times, and each fight is a devastating knockout. He may have learnt from these mistakes, and if he does, it'll make it more interesting. There'll be, some of these other fights will be able to be built up. But I think if you watch Anthony Joshua and you've followed his professional career, the actual progress, I believe, has been fairly limited. There was a time a couple of fights ago where he had actually showed some progress. The movement had improved. A few other bits and pieces had actually improved. But, if you think about what we saw right at the start of his professional career and what we saw this week, very little improvement. Very little improvement for someone who's gone on to become, a 3-belt world champion. So we will see this rematch. I'm pretty sure about it in the UK. I'll have to think whether I believe that Anthony Joshua is going to be able to turn it around. I mean, I'm sure when I do my preview of that matchup, I will probably be back in Anthony Joshua to recapture it. And I'm sure the vast majority of people will do as well. But there you go. I mean, it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks. We've got Tyson Fury in his fight. And then after that, I will be doing the 2 yearly heavyweight rankings video to bring it all together. And I have to think whether Andy Ruiz Jr. deserves number one. Is he number one? You know, is beating Anthony Joshua number one? You know, or will Deontay Wilder now take that top spot? You know, and then how does the rest fit? Where does Anthony Joshua now sit in that Big Ten setup? Jump down to the comments section. Let me know what you think about this whole Anthony Joshua situation. Let me know what you thought about the fight. Did you pick Andy Ruiz? I know that there was a few people that did. Let me know in the comments section. Let me know where they go from here. What do you think is going to happen? And obviously, remember, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you when the new videos drop.